When we watch stories of resilience and new beginnings, we reflect, awaken, and may take steps that help us become happier and more fulfilled. Let us watch this video and think, slowing down isn't giving up, it's choosing to truly live. What in your life needs more presence today? She was standing in the kitchen when the pain arrived, without permission. Not sharp at first, just heavy, like a weight pressing from the inside. Her hand reached the counter out of instinct, not fear. The clock on the wall kept ticking, indifferent to her confusion. Life did not warn her that this moment would split everything in two. She tried to breathe slowly, the way she always told herself to do, but the air felt thick, as if it had forgotten how to reach her lungs. Her chest tightened, and the room seemed to tilt slightly. For a second, she wondered if she was imagining it. She had ignored discomfort before, and nothing had ever happened. Her phone lay on the table, face down, silent and distant. She hesitated, telling herself she did not want to overreact. There was always someone else who needed attention more than her. Calling for help felt dramatic, almost selfish. That thought stayed longer than the pain itself. When her knees weakened, fear finally found a voice. It whispered that this was not tiredness or stress this time. It told her that her body was asking to be heard. Her heart felt unfamiliar, like it no longer belonged to her. She pressed her palm against her chest, searching for control. The ambulance lights painted the walls in restless colors. Neighbors' faces blurred together as sounds grew distant. Someone asked her name, and she answered automatically. Another voice said the word heart, and it echoed too loudly. She realized she might not be in charge anymore. Inside the ambulance, time stretched and folded strangely. Every breath felt counted, measured, fragile. She thought of unfinished tasks and unanswered messages. None of them felt important in that moment. What mattered was the terrifying fact that she was still here. As the siren cut through the night, one thought remained. If this was how everything ended, it felt incomplete. Not tragic, not dramatic, just unfinished. Her life replayed not as memories, but as absences, and her heart kept beating, as if demanding an answer. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and quiet resignation. Machines hummed softly, filling the space with artificial life. She stared at the ceiling, tracing invisible cracks with her eyes. Her body was present, but her thoughts floated somewhere else. This stillness felt louder than any noise she remembered. Doctors came and went, speaking calmly, professionally. They used words meant to reassure, wrapped in certainty. She nodded at the right moments, playing her role well. Inside, she felt detached, like an observer of her own body. No one asked how her heart felt emotionally. When she was alone, the silence pressed closer. There was no schedule to follow, no one to take care of. Her phone buzzed with concerned messages and missed calls. She read none of them, turning the screen dark again. For the first time, she had nothing to respond to. Her chest ached dully, but the deeper pain came from stillness. Without movement, her thoughts had nowhere to hide. She noticed how uncomfortable it felt to simply exist. Rest made her restless, and calm made her uneasy. She wondered when slowing down became so frightening. The heart monitor traced steady lines beside her bed. Each beep reminded her that she was still alive. It felt strange to need proof of something so basic. She listened closely, almost afraid of the silence between beats. Her heart had become something external, something watched. Night fell, and the hospital dimmed its lights. Shadows stretched across the room, soft and patient. She closed her eyes, but did not sleep. Memories surfaced without order or invitation. They felt heavier than the diagnosis itself. She realized then that survival was not the real question. Her body would recover. The doctors seemed confident, but something else had cracked open quietly. A space where certainty used to live now felt empty, and she did not know what would fill it. The cardiologist spoke gently, pointing at charts and results. Percentages, risks, and timelines filled the conversation. She listened carefully, absorbing the information politely. Everything sounded reasonable, manageable, controlled, yet none of it touched what she was feeling inside. He explained lifestyle changes, medications, precautions. Words like mild and early were meant to comfort her. She smiled faintly, grateful for the reassurance, but her chest felt tight for reasons no test could measure. Numbers could not explain the exhaustion she carried. She signed papers with steady hands and practiced calm. The system moved efficiently, smoothly, without pause. Her heart attack became a case, a file, a recovery plan. She wondered how easily pain could be organized, how quickly fear could be reduced to data. When the doctor left, the room felt emptier than before, not because she was afraid of the outcome, but because no one had named what she felt. There was relief, yes, but also disappointment, as if something important had been overlooked. She thought about how long she had lived this way, doing what was expected, ignoring what was felt, pushing through discomfort as proof of strength, calling exhaustion normal, even admirable. Her heart had finally refused that agreement. The monitor beeped steadily, unconcerned with regret. Her body was healing, but her mind wandered backward. She remembered moments she rushed through without noticing. Conversations half heard, days half lived. None of those losses appeared on any chart. As she prepared to leave the hospital, one thought lingered. If her heart had spoken sooner, would she have listened? Or did it need to break to finally be heard? The question stayed unanswered, heavy and quiet, and it followed her all the way home. The front door opened to a house that felt unfamiliar. Everything stood exactly where she had left it. Furniture, photos, and routines waited patiently. Yet the space felt larger, emptier, almost echoing. She realized the change had happened inside her. She moved slowly, carefully, as instructed. Each step felt deliberate, almost ceremonial. The house smelled the same, but she noticed it more. Dust in the corners, light through the windows, details she had rushed past for years now demanded attention. The couch became her temporary world. She sat there, unsure what to do with the time. Resting felt undeserved, even wrong. Her mind searched for tasks, for usefulness. Stillness challenged her more than any job ever had. She noticed how quiet the house truly was. No voices, no schedules, no immediate needs. The silence was not peaceful, just exposed. It reflected parts of her she had ignored. Loneliness crept in, not as sadness, but as awareness. Photographs on the wall caught her eye, smiling faces from years that felt distant. She remembered being present only halfway in those moments, always thinking about what came next, rarely allowing herself to simply be there. Her body reminded her to slow down with small pains, a tight chest, a shallow breath, a sudden fatigue. These signals felt like warnings, not threats. She listened, reluctantly at first. Trust between her and her body felt fragile. That night, lying in her own bed, she stayed awake. The ceiling looked different from the hospital's, but the thoughts remained. Home had not brought comfort, only clarity. Something in her old life no longer fit, and she sensed that returning to it unchanged was impossible. Morning arrived without urgency for the first time. No alarms, no deadlines waiting to be chased. Sunlight filled the room slowly, patiently. She lay still, unsure how to begin the day. Freedom felt heavier than responsibility ever had. She made coffee and sat at the table without distractions. No phone, no list, no background noise. The cup warmed her hands as she breathed carefully. Each sip felt intentional, almost intimate. Time moved differently when she allowed it to. Guilt surfaced unexpectedly, sharp and persistent. Rest felt like abandonment of her role. She worried about being seen as weak or lazy. Those fears had guided her for decades. Now they questioned her right to heal. Her body responded to the pause with mixed signals. Some moments felt lighter, almost peaceful. Others brought discomfort and restlessness. She realized how addicted she had been to motion. Stillness exposed what movement had hidden. She tried to read but lost focus quickly. Tried to watch television, but nothing held her attention. Without constant doing, her thoughts grew louder. They asked questions she had avoided for years, questions without immediate answers. A walk down the block felt like an accomplishment. The air was cool, the sounds sharper than she remembered. Her heart beat steadily, cautiously. She listened to it with new respect. Each step felt like a quiet negotiation with herself. By the end of the day, exhaustion returned. Not physical, but emotional and unfamiliar. She sensed that pausing was not a break, it was the beginning of something uncertain, and she did not yet know how to face it. I hope you enjoy this story of renewal, feel inspired by it, and join us. I'm curious, tell me where you're listening to, watching me from. The second week of recovery arrived, with a strange kind of tension. Her body looked stable from the outside, almost normal again. But inside, everything felt raw, like skin without protection. The quiet no longer felt like rest, it felt like exposure. She realized she had been using busyness as a blanket. In the mornings, she would sit by the window and listen. Not to music, not to the news, not to anyone else's voice. Just the distant hum of traffic and a neighbor's dog barking. Sounds she had ignored for years now felt oddly intimate. It made her wonder what else she had been missing. Her mind began to replay moments she never processed. A sharp comment she swallowed. A choice she never made. Times she smiled while feeling invisible inside. Regrets rose like bubbles in water, one after another. She tried to push them down, but they kept returning. She caught herself reaching for her phone as a reflex, scrolling, answering, reacting, anything to fill the space. But even the screen felt hollow, like a distraction with no comfort. When she put it down, the silence rushed back in. And with it came a truth she could not name yet. At night, she heard her heartbeat more clearly than ever. Not loudly, but insistently, as if it had learned a new language. Each beat felt like a question tapping from inside her ribs. She would hold her breath, then release it slowly. She wasn't afraid of dying as much as she was afraid of waking up unchanged. One afternoon, she opened a drawer and found an old notebook, pages filled with messy handwriting from years ago. Lists of ideas, half-written plans, and a few hopeful sentences. She didn't remember writing them, but she recognized the voice. It sounded like someone who believed she was allowed to want things. She closed the notebook and sat very still. A soft grief spread through her chest, gentle but persistent. Not grief for the heart attack, but for the woman she had been before. The woman who once dreamed without apologizing. And now the question hovered again, refusing to leave. Her follow-up appointment was scheduled early, like a reminder of discipline. She drove slowly, hands tight on the steering wheel. The city looked the same, but she felt like a visitor in it. At every red light, she noticed her breathing, counting it unconsciously. Her body had become a place she watched instead of lived in. In the waiting room, people stared at their phones or magazines. She watched them and wondered how many were carrying hidden fear. A cough, a limp, a tired expression that meant more than it showed. She felt connected to strangers in a new, uncomfortable way, as if pain had made her part of a secret community. The nurse asked routine questions, and she answered like a trained student. Yes, she was taking her medication. Yes, she was walking daily. No, she wasn't smoking. No, she wasn't drinking much caffeine. The nurse smiled, pleased, and marked the chart. But the questions that mattered stayed unasked. When the doctor listened to her heart, she held perfectly still. The stethoscope felt cold, and the silence between them felt warmer. He said her recovery looked good, that she was doing everything right. She thanked him, even though something inside her resisted that sentence. Doing everything right had led her here in the first place. Driving home, she noticed her shoulders were tense. She lowered them slowly, as if releasing years of habit. At a stop sign, she placed one hand on her chest. Her heart beat steadily, faithfully, without demanding applause. It was the only part of her that had finally told the truth. That evening, she tried cooking dinner like she used to, chopping vegetables, cleaning as she went, moving quickly out of instinct. Within minutes, fatigue rose and her chest tightened slightly. Her body didn't punish her, it warned her with honesty. And she realized she had never treated warning signs as wisdom. She sat down and let the meal wait unfinished. The kitchen felt quiet, and the smell of onions lingered in the air. She stared at the cutting board like it was a mirror. A simple thought formed, clear and unsettling. If her body could speak, what else had been trying to speak to? The next morning, she decided to walk without a goal. No fitness tracker, no timed route, no pressure to improve, just her sneakers, a light jacket, and the cold air against her face. The sidewalk felt firm under her feet, steady and forgiving. For the first time, she wasn't walking to accomplish anything. She noticed the sound of leaves scraping along the curb, the way sunlight hit the windows of parked cars like small flames, a child laughing somewhere behind a fence she couldn't see. Her senses felt sharper, almost tender, as if waking from sleep. She realized how long she had lived inside her own head. Halfway down the block, she stopped and simply stood there. Her breath rose in little clouds, and her heart beat calmly. Nothing dramatic happened, but something inside her softened. She felt this strange relief of not being needed for a moment. It was peaceful, and it scared her how peaceful it was. Later, she made lunch and sat at the table without multitasking. She tasted the food instead of rushing it down. The quiet became less threatening, more like a room she could enter. She thought about the notebook in the drawer and did not flinch. Curiosity began to replace avoidance, just slightly. She pulled the notebook out again and turned to a random page. A line stood out in her own handwriting, simple and aching. It spoke about wanting to create something that was hers alone, not for a boss, not for a family, not for approval. She read it twice, and her throat tightened. In the afternoon, she called a friend she hadn't spoken to in years, not to ask for anything, not to fix a problem, just to connect. The conversation was awkward at first, like learning a forgotten language. Then, it warmed, and laughter slipped in, quiet and surprising. When she hung up, she felt lighter than she had in months. That night, she noticed something new, anticipation. Small, fragile, but real, like a candle in a drafty room. It wasn't about work or duty or someone else's needs. It was about the possibility that she could change her life. And the thought didn't leave her as she fell asleep. The first email from work arrived like a knock on the door. A polite message asking how she was feeling, followed by when. When would she be back? When could she take a call? When could she help? Her stomach tightened and her shoulders rose without permission. The old rhythm reached for her like a familiar chain. She told herself she could handle it carefully this time. She could return with boundaries, with balance, with new wisdom. That idea sounded mature and responsible, like something she should believe. But when she opened her laptop, her heart beat faster. Not from medical danger, but from emotional memory. She tried answering a few messages, keeping her tone calm. Her fingers moved quickly, practiced, efficient, almost automatic. Within minutes, her mind shifted back into urgency. She felt the old hunger to prove she was reliable. It was as if the heart attack had never happened. She stopped and stared at the screen, confused by herself. Why did returning to normal feel like stepping into a trap? Why did responsibility feel like a threat instead of a value? Her chest tightened again, a subtle warning, steady and clear. Her body was reminding her of what her mind wanted to forget. She closed the laptop, but the guilt came immediately. The guilt was loud, rehearsed, and cruelly familiar. It told her she was being dramatic, lazy, self-centered. It reminded her of everyone who counted on her competence. She hated how convincing that voice still was. That evening, she tried to clean the house like she used to. Fast, thorough, focused, as if speed proved worthiness. She felt dizzy halfway through and had to sit on the floor. The cool tile pressed against her legs, grounding and humiliating. Tears came before she could stop them, hot and quiet. She realized she didn't know how to live without earning her place. She didn't know how to be without performing usefulness. The heart attack had interrupted her body, but not her beliefs. And now she faced the harder recovery, unlearning a lifetime. The question returned again, sharper than before. That night, she couldn't sleep, no matter how still she lay. The room was dark, but her mind was bright with restless thoughts. She heard the refrigerator click on and off like a metronome. Her heartbeat followed its own steady tempo beneath everything. It felt like a conversation she had avoided for years. She got up and walked to the living room barefoot. The floor was cold, and the air felt thin and honest. She sat on the couch and stared at the dark window. Her reflection looked older than she remembered, and softer too. She wondered when she stopped recognizing herself. A memory rose unexpectedly, vivid and sharp. She was in her 20s, talking about what she wanted to do someday. Her voice in that memory sounded sure, excited, almost fearless. Then life happened, and she became practical, dependable, strong. She realized she had been praised for disappearing. She whispered the question out loud, as if sound would make it real. Do I want to survive, or do I want to live? The words hung in the room, simple but dangerous. Survival was familiar, measurable, something she could manage. Living felt unknown, like stepping into weather without a forecast. She thought about the notebook again, and finally opened it fully. She turned pages slowly, letting the past speak without interruption. Dreams were there, messy and imperfect, but undeniably hers. She felt grief, then anger, then something like relief, because the proof existed. She had once been alive inside. Her phone buzzed with another message, another request, another win. She looked at it and did not pick it up. Her hands trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from choice. For the first time, she allowed the world to wait, and in that pause, she heard herself more clearly. She didn't have an answer yet, not fully, but she knew she could no longer pretend the question wasn't there. Her heart had survived, but her spirit demanded more than survival. She stared at the notebook until her eyes burned with quiet determination. And she sensed that the next step would require courage she hadn't used before. The grief arrived quietly, without warning or drama. It wasn't tied to pain in her chest or fear of death. It settled instead in the spaces between memories. Moments that could have been different now felt heavy. She realized she was mourning possibilities, not events. She cried in the afternoon light, sitting on the edge of the bed. Not sobbing, just steady tears that didn't ask permission. There was no one to impress, no role to perform. She let her shoulders shake without apologizing. This sadness felt honest, almost necessary. She thought about all the times she had said later. Later when things calm down. Later when others need less. Later when it makes sense. When it feels safe. Later had quietly become never. That realization hurt more than the heart attack ever did. The woman she had been felt distant but familiar, strong, reliable, praised for endurance and sacrifice, but also tired, unseen, quietly shrinking. She had called that strength for years. Now she saw the cost of carrying it alone. She picked up the notebook again, holding it gently, not as evidence of failure, but of truth. Those pages had waited patiently, without judgment. They reminded her she once had desires of her own, and that they hadn't disappeared, only gone silent. As evening approached, the grief began to change shape. It softened, becoming something closer to respect. Respect for how hard she had tried to survive. Respect for the version of herself that did her best. Forgiveness began where blame used to live. She went to bed feeling emptied but lighter. Not fixed, not healed, but honest. Grief had opened a door instead of closing one. Behind it was something unfamiliar and fragile. Hope, still unnamed, waited quietly. The next morning, she woke with a strange clarity. Not energy, not excitement, just a calm focus. Her heart beat steadily, like a quiet agreement. She stayed in bed a moment longer than usual. For once, she wasn't rushing away from herself. She made breakfast slowly and opened the notebook again. This time, she read from the beginning. Ideas spilled across the pages without structure or logic. They were imperfect, hopeful, and deeply personal. She felt connected to the woman who wrote them. One desire stood out more than the others. Simple, almost modest, yet persistent. She had wanted to create something meaningful with her voice. Not to impress, but to express. She had buried that want under responsibility for years. The fear returned immediately, sharp and practical. Wasn't she too old, too late, too ordinary? Who would listen? Who would care? Who would support this? The doubts lined up efficiently well, but they felt weaker than before. She realized something subtle but powerful. The desire hadn't asked for permission. It had survived neglect, silence, and self-denial. It returned now not as a demand, but an invitation. That gentleness moved her more than confidence ever had. She spent the afternoon researching quietly, without pressure. No commitments, no announcements, just curiosity. Each small discovery felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. Her heart remained calm, steady, approving. It felt like alignment instead of effort. That night, she wrote one new sentence in the notebook. Not a plan, not a promise, just an acknowledgement of what she wanted. Seeing it on the page felt grounding and brave. She slept with the notebook beside her bed. Change did not arrive as a dramatic moment. There was no bold declaration or sweeping action. Instead, it appeared as a quiet decision, one that felt almost too small to matter. But it stayed with her throughout the day. She decided to protect her mornings. No emails, no obligations, no explanations, just time to breathe, think, and feel. It felt radical in its simplicity, and terrifying in how much it mattered to her. When messages arrived, she answered slowly. Not immediately, not automatically. She noticed how often urgency had been imagined, how rarely the world truly fell apart without her. That realization brought both relief and discomfort. She set boundaries without justifying them. Her voice trembled slightly when she did, not from doubt, but from unfamiliar courage. Each boundary felt like claiming space in her own life. Her heart responded with calm, steady approval. She worked on her idea in short, gentle sessions, stopping before exhaustion, honoring her limits. Progress felt slower than her old pace, but it felt real, not forced. For the first time, she trusted consistency over intensity. There were moments of fear, moments of doubt, but they no longer controlled the outcome. She acknowledged them and kept moving anyway, This was not rebellion, it was alignment, and that difference changed everything. By evening, she felt tired in a new way, a clean, honest tiredness without resentment. She had chosen herself without harming anyone else. The decision felt small, but it echoed deeply. Something inside her had shifted permanently. Weeks passed, and life slowly reorganized itself, not around urgency, but around intention. Her days felt quieter, but fuller. She noticed her breathing before stress took over. Her body felt like an ally instead of a threat. She walked often, not to escape, but to arrive. Arrive in her body, her thoughts, her surroundings. The city no longer rushed past her unnoticed. She recognized seasons changing in small details. Presence became a daily practice, not a goal. Work became something she did, not who she was. She performed well without disappearing inside it. When pressure rose, she paused instead of pushing. The old guilt still appeared, but it held less power. She no longer confused exhaustion with worth. Her creative work grew slowly, quietly. She shared it with a few trusted people. Their response mattered less than her own satisfaction. For the first time, she felt proud without needing approval. That pride felt steady, not loud. There were setbacks, days when fear resurfaced strongly, moments when old habits reached for control again. But now she recognized them as signals, not commands. She rested when needed, without punishment. Recovery had become a way of living. Her heart remained stable, monitored, cared for, but it no longer felt like the center of fear. It felt like a guide, honest and consistent. Each beat reminded her of balance, not danger. Her body trusted her more now. As she looked ahead, the future felt open, not guaranteed, not perfect, but possible. She no longer needed certainty to move forward. This new rhythm felt sustainable and kind. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid of continuing. On the anniversary of her heart attack, she woke early, not with dread, but with quiet reflection. She made coffee and sat by the window. The morning light felt familiar and welcoming. Her heart beat steadily, like an old friend. She thought about the woman she had been a year ago, rushing, proving, surviving, without question. That woman felt distant, but not forgotten. She felt gratitude instead of regret. Survival had been the beginning, not the end. She understood now that living required participation, listening, choosing, resting, and risking honesty. It meant allowing joy without justification. It meant saying no without explanation. Living was not louder than survival, just deeper. Her heart attack no longer felt like an enemy. It felt like a message delivered in the only language left. Painful, yes, but also precise. It had forced her to stop running from herself, and in stopping, she had finally arrived. She continued her work, her creation, her days, not perfectly, not fearlessly, but truthfully. She no longer waited for permission to matter. Her life felt chosen, not endured. That difference filled her with quiet strength. As the day unfolded, she smiled without reason. Not from happiness alone, but from alignment. Her heart beat calmly, confidently, alive. She listened to it, and to herself. Both spoke the same language now. She knew challenges would still come. Aging, loss, uncertainty were part of being human. But she also knew this truth, deeply and finally. It was never about surviving the moment. It was always about choosing to live. If you made it to the end, thank you, truly. If you're already subscribed, thank you for being here. If you're not yet, stay with us. And if this video touched you, share, leave a like, a comment. I read every single one.